Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the owner of Thendara Wellness. She is also a fitness coach and beauty counter educator. Today's guest is Elise Munn. Elise, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
For sure. So Elise, we're just going to jump right into things. We've got a little conversational warm-up. I've got 4 questions for you. The first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual that you like to stick to on most mornings?
This has been something that I've been in the practice of for a couple months now.
Okay.
But I've started using Headspace to meditate.
Mm-hmm.
As you see, or as you know now, I own Thendara Wellness, and my job is one-on-one clients primarily. My first client is 6 a.m. Every single day, Monday through Friday. And I found that prior, when I was waking up at about 5:30, pouring my coffee, throwing on my stretchy pants, and jumping out the door, I started to resent everything that was going on during the day because I never felt like I was taking ownership of my day. So flipping the script, I now meditate and I do a gratitude journal. So I write 5 things that I'm grateful for, whether from the day prior or just in general, to get my mind right. And I do that before I even get out of bed.
Love that.
Yeah, so 5 minutes of meditation,
Okay.
and then 5 things I'm grateful for, and then coffee.
Then coffee. That's good. That's good, and that's great that you had that self-awareness of kind of like you said, you had this kind of this resentment building up throughout the day because you're kind of behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So that's great that you had that self-awareness of like, hey, like something's got to change, and then you took the action, because a lot of times we have maybe that self-awareness, but we don't change, and that doesn't really do any good, right? So that's awesome. All right, so the second question that I have for you is, do you have a favorite book or book that you like to gift often?
Favorite is difficult to answer, but currently I just finished Daring Greatly by Brene Brown.
Awesome.
All the hype.
Yeah.
And I listened to Brene's TED Talk back in college, so now 10 years ago.
Okay.
And felt really uncomfortable with talking about vulnerability and shame and everything she discusses and researches. And in the past year and a half, I think it's something I've explored a lot more, especially going down the entrepreneurial journey and what that looks like and what people are noticing.
Right.
And Daring Greatly has been great to read and to reflect on, because it's more than just vulnerability, shame. It's how you show up for yourself. It's how you show up for others. And she talks a lot about scarcity mindset, and when you're living in a scarcity mindset, you're really selling yourself short of what you're able to do and what you're able to attain. And if you're chasing perfection, you're actually losing time. You're wasting or squandering time, is what she says. And I think that has been an interesting lesson for me. The excellence and perfection are just a facade. We all want it, but it's not real. Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that Brene Brown, she's probably one of the authors and one of the individuals, just through all these different podcast conversations, that comes up very, very often. I know Daring Greatly, that specific book, I know she's written a lot of different books, but that one's come up quite a few times too. So it's kind of cool, as I've had all these different conversations, to see a lot of the same names in regards to maybe podcasts or authors, influential people in my guests' lives. The same names keep coming up, so it's kind of cool. Now, for this next question, which is, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, or word? I like to kind of specify this quote, mantra, or word could be something kind of like currently in this season of life, or it could be a favorite quote, mantra, or word from a previous season of life, because we all go through different seasons, right? And I know for me, like, I'm a huge quote guy, huge into mantras and just like individual words, and there's different things for different seasons. So is there a favorite quote, mantra, or word for this season or maybe a past season that's been very impactful in your life?
Currently and time again would be, I don't know the exact verbiage, but nobody ever said it would be easy. They just said it would be worth it.
There you go.
Anytime I'm struggling or going through challenge, I come back to that and know that the struggle is what makes it worth it.
Right,
If it's easy, it's not worth it.
For sure.
And then timeless, previous seasons again, my father always has told me, never forget to stop and smell the roses.
There we go. Yeah, I've heard that one before.
Yeah, it wasn't original, but it's a Rob Munn classic.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
I think that utilizing that as a base of don't forget to stop and smell the roses, that among all of the external noise and internal noise that we deal with in our day-to-day and distraction and the negativity that tries to detract us from our true purpose, not forgetting to stop and smell the roses, not forgetting to stop and enjoy the moment, to relish in the adventure of life, I think is what creates a fullness in our lives. So
for you, Elise, like, is that something, kind of this, notion of stopping and smelling the roses, kind of like enjoy life at different times? Is that something that for you that you really have to kind of concentrate and focus on doing because you're kind of like super driven, like type A, or is that something that kind of just comes naturally for you?
I think it is a practice. It really is. Yeah. If it came naturally, I wouldn't probably have to focus on it nearly as much.
Yeah.
But I think that it has become an innate value. And awesome. So by that, it's a guiding value. It's something I'm constantly utilizing as a lens for why and what I'm doing.
Okay.
And I think that is something that's internal.
Okay, beautiful, perfect. Last one here. If there's more than one, please feel free to share, but do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast?
I'm constantly switching it up.
Yeah, me too.
When I go on my runs, I usually will throw on something, or I'll put in one word that's in my brain and find a podcast on it and listen. Recently, I got a new car, and they give you the Sirius XM radio.
Dang, yeah, stepping it up.
I got the upgrade. And the Kellogg School of Business has a radio station and also a podcast, and I love just listening to different entrepreneurs, different business owners, different markets, finances, things that I didn't have exposure to in school.
Okay.
And so listening to the business side and the financial side of business, it's all intertwined.
Of course.
It's interesting to me. Chasing Excellence is on there a lot. Really interesting on how to attain balance in this life that we live.
Yeah.
And
okay.
It's a constant mix-up.
Cool. Now, I just want to ask you, because we live in this social media age with Instagram and all these other outlets and stuff, is there a couple people that maybe, and it can be, I mean, you can share if it's like somebody that you like, if you have like a personal coach or whatever you meet with once a week or whatever, but is there somebody out there in regards to kind of like an influencer on some level that has been like very impactful in your life, let's say in the last year, that you wouldn't mind talking about, so that maybe somebody can go to Instagram and kind of find them and be built up and inspired as well?
Wow, these are all great questions.
Thank you.
People on Instagram that.
It could be like somebody in the fitness industry, business, entrepreneurship, that you're just like, oh, like when you see their when they pop up like on your feed, you're like, oh, like I'm checking out their content because like it just encourages me.
Completely. I don't think he knows this, so this might come to a surprise, but Tyler Quinn, he's the co-founder of Alchemy 365, and I have been fortunate to work for the company, and I don't know if it was intentional, but in the last year, his Instagram has really spotlighted what it is to start a business, the vulnerability of starting a business, the process, and also the process of fine-tuning a really incredibly, I think, world-renowned fitness concept.
Yeah.
And how to get that to the masses and how to do it deliberately, intentionally, and with, I think, an incredible amount of grace.
Sweet. Love it. All right, so we're going to transition into kind of like your story. I'd love to have you just kind of share, like, with myself and the listeners, where did you grow up? Kind of like, what were those childhood, younger years like? Were you involved in extracurricular activities, sports? How many siblings did you have? Just kind of like unpack a little bit of kind of like the family dynamics, if you don't mind, for us.
Great.
All right.
I grew up in Shazy Lake, New York. It's about 15 minutes south of the Canadian border.
Dang, that's way up there then.
Yes, there are more cows than humans for sure.
Sounds like where I'm from, Iowa.
Yeah, rural.
Yeah.
So I grew up, I'm the baby of 4. I have twin sisters and an older brother. They are 7 and 8 years older than me.
Oh, wow.
So I was the blessing, is what I like to say, 8 years later.
That's awesome.
And my dad's one of 11, so
Dang.
big family, big Irish Catholic family.
Okay.
And I grew up always doing something, always on the move.
Right.
I think I was pretty sure that on like field trips they would put a one-on-one chaperone with me to just watch me. And I'm pretty sure that the backpack that had the leash was created because of me.
Awesome.
Like, I was just going for it.
That's great, yeah.
And I always had to entertain myself because my brothers and sisters were older. At that point, they were in organized sports, and we had town ball that I would play, but for the most part, I had a lot of, like, I would play school with the dolls, I would have dance rehearsals with my dolls. My dog was my best friend. Lots of playing. And then I went to our local public school, and my sisters went to college 2002, 2001, and I wanted to go to college. At this point, I'm 7th grade, 6th grade, and I decided that I should also be going to college.
Interesting.
Packing up, And one thing led to another. I hated the public school bus. It was like an hour-and-a-half drive in the morning because we were the last to get, first to get picked up, last to get dropped off. And my mom mentioned another school that was a boarding school. And I went on the computer, and at this point, it's 1998 Windows, and it was push
dial-up and all the good stuff, right?
And she said something about the school on a farm, and I'm looking at the website, and it says push to hear Daisy the cow, our school mascot, and you push the button to hear moo, and I'm looking at the pictures on this such a basic website. It's a slide next to the stairs, and then there's a rock climbing wall, and the gym was this Quonset hut from World War II, so it's one of the, it's oval shaped. And I'm pretty sure at that point I printed out the application, did it all, forged my parents' signatures, sent it in, and a couple weeks later we got a phone call that we were asked to interview at the school, and it was about an hour from my parents' house, and they were like, "Huh, you're funny. Like, we have 3 children in college. The last thing we're doing is sending you to private school."
Right.
But we went to the interview, and I was in love. I mean, this farm, and it was 4th through 9th grade houses, and every weekend you'd go skiing, or you'd go hiking, or rock climbing, and you had barn chores in the morning, and it was very, I think there's some Waldorf and Montessori influences in there, but also just no computers, no cell phones, really interesting. And I fell in love, and I was like, okay, so like I'm gonna go. We're in the financial aid office. Next thing you know, my mom's like, yeah, that's funny, you're not going. And I acted as though she took my heart and soul and my dreams of my entire life and squashed them. And I didn't realize what a school tuition being more expensive than a salary, what that looks like. And then quickly learned that my siblings were paying for college on their own. They were not receiving financial aid or financial support from my parents, not because my parents didn't want to, but because they physically were not able to. And so that was a little bit of a eye-awakening moment of what I just didn't realize. I didn't realize that, and around that time, we had some struggles in our family financially, and my mother got sick, and I think that was really difficult because I was such a young little girl, and all of a sudden I felt like I was forced to grow up quickly.
Right.
And that was tough. That was tough for a lot of reasons. My mom went to rehab, and I was kind of just learning what it was like to have my mother, and then she wasn't there, and all this was going on. You know, we're unpacking a lot here.
No, that's I appreciate it. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, so. It just was. It was a lot, but I still. I'm trying to think.
I want, like, so it's like, so obviously, you know, it's like you said, it's like a lot, there's a lot going on. Like you're a very young girl, you're going through all kinds of different changes, you know, mentally and physically and all that. It's you know, just that alone, being like a tween or a teenager, like there's just so much with that alone, right? And then to have like the family stuff going on. So like how like mentally, where did that take you when your mom started having her struggles as you were like progressing into high school? Like how did high school look for you? Was it a bad experience, or like how did you handle all that?
Totally. Well, I ended up getting a full ride to go to farm school.
Okay.
Country school, not farm school. So
okay.
I was sponsored to go by another woman in the North Country.
Sweet, there we go.
So from 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, I lived at North Country School and worked on the farm and learned how to ski, learned how to hike, learned how to love being in the outdoors.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went to Emma Willard School in Troy, New York, and it's an all-girls boarding school.
Okay.
I went from having no grades, we just graded our effort in my junior boarding school, to having a list posted of who had the highest grade point average. And our college flags of where we got accepted were put on the wall to everyone to see. So quite a contrast between the two education platforms. Very similar in ways, but also extremely different. And I went from 9th grade into 10th grade with all of these girls and living in a dorm with all of them. And I think that is where that balance came for me of learning what you do to make your life full and how hard you work to get to the next step, because the North Country School was extremely experiential learning. You learned with your hands, you learned with your mind, but I don't know if it always pushed you to the next step academically.
For sure.
Physically, mentally, yes. And then Emma Willard, it was like you had to show up, do your work on time, and produce a really solid result. And I think I was really lucky and blessed to have the best of both worlds.
Awesome, yeah.
And again, you know, going back to my family, I was lucky to have an external support system outside of my parents while they were, you know, dealing with some of their issues, and it gave me an opportunity to risk and know that there was a support network or a net to catch me if I fell, and to try something and fail and know that I was going to be okay.
For sure.
And also note that there was stability.
Right.
I think that as a small child, all I knew was instability, and all I knew was chaos, and I didn't understand the concept of how to nurture myself or what conflict resolution looked like. Things that I don't know if I knew in high school either, but I started seeing it. I started seeing people who showed up and provided stability, who showed up and provided that nurture and caring attitude and personality that I was craving. And also people who are willing to support you if you did fail.
So I just want to touch on a little bit more, if you don't mind, kind of like that relationship with your parents and stuff. So you said that your mom had some of her own struggles. What was your relationship like with your dad then?
Ooh, I think my dad was trying a bit to hold it all together, if that makes sense.
Of course
having
it
all
does.
4 kids and again having me unable to really support myself. But it's hard, that was a lot of pressure on him.
Right.
It was a lot of pressure on my mother. I don't think either of them anticipated what struggles they were going to go through. I don't think anyone does.
Right, of course not.
And I think they were just trying to provide the best they could for us with what they had. Like, if there's anything that I've learned from them, it is do what you can with what you have.
Absolutely.
And while I can, give myself a pity party and say, woe is me and it was so difficult, they bred perseverance. They bred that grit.
It's
and
powerful.
it was survival mode for us, but we've all come back, or we're all on the other side in a much better place now. And, my dad, time and time again, when I struggle now, and my mother, I'll call them and I'll say, hey, I'm struggling. I'm in a really bad place right now, and I don't know what to do. And my father and my mom, it's work. It's hard work.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy. And the struggle is there for a reason, because you're stronger than this. And struggle shows you how strong you truly are. And I think I trust that wholeheartedly because they've been through it. They've dealt with it. And they've raised 4, don't want to toot my own horn, but incredible children who are giving back to society in their own ways.
Beautiful. Cool. All right, so you go off to now the all girls school. Was that high school, or was that your college experience?
That was high school.
Okay.
Yeah, so I lived with 300 girls.
Okay.
In a dorm.
That's an experience you could probably write a book on, huh?
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, so I did that, and it was hard. Females are hard in general, and females at 16 years old.
You said it.
Yeah,
you said it. I didn't.
They are difficult. And it gave me a whirlwind. Well, I say I didn't have self-esteem issues, but I really, all of a sudden, learned what insecurity was. And because compared to North Country School, where there were no, there was no exposure to financial disparities.
Okay.
So because there weren't cell phones, because there weren't computers, you really didn't know who was coming in and being an heirloom to the #1 meat packing industry company in the U.S. versus who was there on a full ride. You had no idea.
Okay.
Emma Willard, you knew.
Okay.
You knew who was getting dropped off in
sure.
the, really fancy car or who had the nicest computer. And I think that was the first time where I realized what a huge contrast in financial, socioeconomic statuses are, were, and how much harder I believe it is to work for something when you don't have the financial means to just go get it. And for me, that was how it was. Nothing was going to be handed to me on a silver platter. It was going to require me to put my head down and work like all hell to get it.
For sure.
And so I did. And then I went to George Washington University in D.C.
Cool.
And it's crazy. I said I wouldn't make a decision based off money. And I was enrolled at Ithaca College in their 6-year doctorate physical therapy program. And that's what I wanted to do. My sister went to Ithaca. I knew the campus. I was so ready. And then I looked at my financial aid package from there compared to the other schools, and it was nowhere near what the other schools were offering me. Knowing, again, my parents didn't have the means to send us to college financially, and I was going to be on my own. I was taking out my own loans to do it. And so I went to Ithaca twice at bat for myself to say, look at these packages. You're nowhere near any of the other packages. I think you've, something's not right. And they're like, well, sorry, this is what we can give. We can't budge.
Welcome to the real world, right?
Yeah. And I at first was like, okay, well, it's fine. It's going to be great. $300,000 in debt will be fine. And then I realized for George Washington University, I could pretty much come out even. and not come out with too much debt.
Okay.
And graduate a year early. So I did the undergrad in 3 years with the idea that I would go get my doctorate in physical therapy and do another 3 years after that. So I went to GW, and I do think that when people say you go to college to figure out what you want to do, you also go to college to figure out what you don't want to do.
There you go, yeah.
Or where you don't want to live, or who you don't want to be around.
Yeah.
DC was that for me. It is a swamp. It's a concrete jungle.
Yeah.
It is about who you know and how you know them.
Right.
And what political ladder you're climbing.
For sure.
And I had zero interest in any of that. And so it was such a valuable experience in the fact that it showed me exactly what I did not want in life versus what I wanted. Yeah, and I majored in exercise science and athletic training in my sophomore year. I did an internship for the athletic training program at the Olympic Training Center in Lake Placid.
Oh, cool.
So house of bobsled, skeleton, luge, biathlon, Nordic combined, a lot of winter sports.
Yeah.
And I lived there and worked in their sports medicine center and managed the recovery center. And
cool.
I think it was at that point that I realized that I wanted to work with an athletic population. And I talk about it later on, but I recognize the multidisciplinary approach to wellness because at the Olympic Training Center they have your massage therapist, your PT, your athletic trainer, and your chiropractor all next to each other treating the same athlete. And then they have the strength and conditioning center
for sure
down the way. What I recognized at that point was the gap in communication from sports medicine to strength and conditioning. That there is this continuum from injury to performance. And we haven't quite bridged that gap. That once someone is discharged from physical therapy, it's great, you're good, go run a marathon. Well, 9 times out of 10, they're not ready to run a marathon and they get hurt.
For sure.
And they end up back in
For sure.
So when we talk about the business, that's where I would say the initial spark for the business came.
Beautiful. Now, before we do kind of move in that direction, which we're definitely going to, and spend probably the rest of the time kind of talking about that type of stuff, where did the interest to get into like the exercise science and all of that type of stuff, where did that come from? Because we didn't really touch on like the extracurricular activities or any sports and stuff when you're younger. So we did talk about, you sound like you grew up pretty free range and outside and all that. But where did the interest in like, studying exercise science and health and physical therapy, where did that come to fruition?
I played soccer and I ran track in college and cross country skied when I was younger. Cool. And in high school. And my senior year of high school, I was playing regular soccer and club soccer. School club. Started having pain in my lower leg, ignored it, took some ibuprofen. Did that for another 2 months. Next thing you know, I couldn't really put weight on it. And I went and I had a stress fracture of my tibia. It was pretty close to fracturing through the entire bone. And I was told I wasn't allowed to put weight on it, and I had to go to physical therapy. And I was probably their worst patient. I went in there, and I told my physical therapist, I can still remember the conversation, that he didn't know shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. He didn't know shit, and that like telling me how to stretch was not going to make me feel better, and let me just go run and leave me alone, because I was training for track at this point. I was furious. I was like, this is bogus. Doing a couple of movements and that, no. And every time I go there, I kind of would be like, nope, this is a joke, and not give them the time of day. And it's like, just stick with it. Sure enough, 12 weeks later, so I was able to start weight bearing. And also at that time, I also realized how intertwined the sports psychology side of injury is with athletic identity. When you identify as an athlete and you are told you cannot go do the thing you love and everyone else is doing the thing they love.
That sucks.
Holy, I mean, I went into a deep, dark place and I thought it was all my physical therapist's fault. But yeah, came back, had an amazing track season. We went to States, felt great, had no pain. And then so it was my junior year because I called him up and I said, hey, I know we didn't really get along last year, but I'm really interested in what you do. Is there any way I can intern with you? And so I did. I did an internship.
Well, it was a dude.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good dude, because it sounds like you were a little bit of a
yeah, I was a hellion.
a knucklehead with him, huh?
Totally. So yeah, I did an internship, and
cool.
I fell in love with the process.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's working more than with just the body. You are working with the human. You're working with the mind.
Okay.
And the idea of watching people go through a transformation is contagious. And that's when I pretty much knew. I thought I wanted to do architecture, and I did an internship at an architecture firm, and they had me sit behind a desk for like 4 hours and draw. And I was like, whoa, what am I doing? And then I failed my color and design class, and I was like, this is not why I picked architecture. So. Exercise science and physical therapy.
Good deal. Yeah, my bachelor's is in exercise science too, and it's always interesting to kind of hear how people that went off to college and stuff. It's kind of interesting to hear how they got interested in kind of what they studied. You know what I mean? So totally. I appreciate you sharing that. Now let's talk about. So you obviously you graduate now. Did you go on and get more education after you got your bachelor's degree, or did you kind of end things with the bachelor's degree?
So just like the quintessential story, I said I'll take 1 year. So I was studying for my boards for athletic training, which are pretty in depth, and I graduated in January. I graduated early and December, and then took January and February to study.
Okay.
And I was convinced that I was done for. I was like, there's no way, and I didn't want to apply for jobs right away because I was afraid I would have to tell them I failed. And then I took my boards and found out I passed, and at that time was just starting an application with our orthopedic hospital in Lake Placid, New York, and they were like, well, we'll hire you, and if you don't pass, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that, but then, I passed and was offered a job and started working full-time in their rehab clinic. So I was working alongside physical therapists, PTAs, occupational therapists, speech therapists, myself. And I worked at a college, I worked at a high school, I taught anatomy and physiology, which I have a whole new appreciation for educators and what they do in our lives.
Of course, yeah.
High schoolers might be the worst. And I loved it. I was in the grind, though.
Yeah.
I worked close to 60 hours a week, and my weekends were at football games or hockey tournaments.
And so you were an athletic trainer then, right? Working with athletes and students and stuff. Yeah. So where did you say that was at? Back in New York?
Yeah, in Lake Placid. So it's the hospital that's linked with the Olympic Training Center.
Okay, cool, awesome. Okay, so let's just talk about a little bit more with in regards to that experience. So what's something or a couple things that you took away from that time? Because you just said kind of you were in the grind, you're working 60 hours a week, things like that. On the weekends, you're with the sports teams and stuff. So what was kind of was it another experience, Elise, where you kind of realized what you didn't want, or was there maybe something else within that experience that has been maybe a valuable lesson that you learned?
I think that, if anything, I was so grateful that I was able to get a job like that.
Yeah.
And I was the youngest one, so I was surrounded. I say time and time again, surround yourself with the smarter people than you, or the people who know more, because that is how you learn. I want to be the stupid kid in the room,
right?
And I'm okay with that at this point. And this was an experience in which I was able to learn from every single person with a different credential, a different background. But I guess I was like, I'd like to say it's a but. I was in preserving mode. I was just head down, going, and not taking a second to really think about what was going to make me happy or what was going to make me feel fulfilled. I just was in the mode of going and doing the damn thing, showing up every day.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no, and probably on myself, I didn't take a moment of personal development.
Right.
Or who do I want to show up as? I just knew I was showing up as an athletic trainer to do my job, and that is what I did every single day. And I think the realization there that came for me 3 years in was that if I chose to stay in that job, there was a glass ceiling that was evident.
Okay.
I was, if I would stay, I would maybe one day promote to a supervisor, maybe a director.
Right.
But that's it.
Yeah.
There's no more up and down after that. And that to me is absolutely what drives me away from something.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how beautiful that glass ceiling looks or how rewarding it looks. It's a ceiling.
Right.
And I refuse to limit myself by any means.
Absolutely.
And that's not to say there isn't due process where it's needed of like work your ass off when you can.
For sure.
But I wanted to know that the opportunities were going to be limitless. And then I just kind of slowly, I made one change. So I moved to Saratoga to be closer to one of my sisters.
Okay.
And started working for the Industrial Athlete, which they work with self-insured companies to cut down on workers' comp cases or workman's comp.
Okay.
So they bring in athletic trainers, they put them on site to places like warehouses, industrial machinery plants.
That's awesome.
Ford has one, and they bring in athletic trainers. They have them on site as ergonomic coaches, as on site evaluation for injuries, and then assessment and treatment as needed. And from that job, I all of a sudden learned why businesses invest in preventative services because we were preventing the injury from ever happening. Whereas at the hospital, I was on the rehab side.
Right.
So now I'm getting on the front of it and getting to see profit and loss statements, getting to defend preventative services to a CEO of a Forbes 500 company and show why it's important, not only in the immediate outcomes, but also in the long-term outcomes.
Right.
And seeing business, that blew my mind because I had never had the exposure to a business. I was working for a non-for-profit hospital. I just did what I was told. And with business, you realize, wow, there's a lot you can take this.
Absolutely.
And if someone's going to give you a check and say, save us triple this, well, I'll figure out a way to.
Right.
And I was doing that, and am I going into the transition?
No, you're good.
Sure?
You're just sharing your story. Yeah, it's all good.
So I was working in that aspects and loved it. Because again, I was working with the human, but I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes the human, the coworker, or the worker, the employee of the company that I was contracted in to prevent injury was like, well, why are you so concerned about my back right now? Because I'm saving the company money, but also I'm investing. My job as a healthcare provider is at the best interests of my patient or my client.
Right.
It's not at the company. And so that's where all of a sudden I was like, well, how do I earn this rapport and trust with a patient when they know that I'm operating on behalf of a company they work for? And that's difficult. That's a difficult thing because at the end of the day, that's the company's duty. They've got to earn the trust of that patient. So it's not on me as an independent contractor to go in. But I came to Colorado for a girls' weekend. I'd only been here once before. And while I was working there, kind of thinking about what it would be like to start my own company with all these little aspects I had started to learn from different jobs. I came out here. I saw a skyline one night with a drink in hand and said, I'm going to move here. Cool. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I'm going to live here. And ended up running into an old connection from the Olympic Training Center while I was out here. And he owned a gym, or owns a gym out here, and we started tossing back and forth a couple ideas. Some ideas that I was thinking about back in New York, and some ideas that he was doing,
Right.
thinking, and all of a sudden he was like, well, why don't you just come out here and do it? Rather than thinking about it, rather than talking about it. And one thing led to another, and a month and a half later, I packed my car and 3 bikes and 2 sets of skis and moved out here.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so when you moved out here, was it Denver like immediately?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
It
Cool.
was.
Okay, so before we move into your entrepreneurship journey, what's like, you know, because like, you know, you graduate from college and stuff, you're early 20s and you're working and stuff, mid 20s, things like that. What's something during that time that you personally, Elise, struggled with that you've maybe since overcome, or something that's maybe still with you that you still kind of have to work through, personally speaking?
Personally.
Outside of like work and job and all that stuff, what's something that was a struggle for you, you know, kind of like in your 20s, and maybe it's a struggle still to this day, but what's that one thing that you've had to work on and you're continuing to work on?
I have struggled with loving myself.
Okay.
I think that always trying to attain the next best thing, or taking away that glass ceiling, there's always this feeling of grinding and leveling up. And while I was doing that, and while I've done that, it's much easier to ignore how I'm actually feeling.
Right.
Or what I actually want, or who I want to actually be. It's easier to hide behind the facade of just grinding it out.
Yeah.
And I don't think I truly was in touch with how bad I was struggling in college for a lot of it. There was definitely, I was the queen of a snowball effect. I just kept going. And I would always say yes to one more commitment or one more responsibility. And I refused to lean on other people because I thought that being the best meant not depending on anyone else, by being able to do it by myself. And I don't know if that was from growing up as a kid of having to do it on my own a little bit in order to make it to the next step, but it became this almost wall that I put up. I refused to let people in. And that was tough and is tough. And I think that it's been a process and a constant practice to take the time to let people in. And know that it's okay if I don't have it all together, or if I don't know exactly what's next. And it's okay to not go 110 miles per hour. That doesn't mean I'm weak or less than or not worthy of, which are all those core false beliefs that are, you know, continually in my head. And I think each of us have something that we've latched onto as a child, or as an event has happened, and I believe mine is continually that I'm not worthy of the love of someone else, or the worthy of love of even loving myself. And that's scary. That's tough to be in. But I try to tell myself that that's a lens. That's a perception. That's the way I look at something. And I can choose to look at it differently and be like, oh, no, you're a badass, you're doing this, and you can also go take a nap, and that doesn't mean you're a lazy POS. So learning to listen to myself and know that the speed at which you're moving isn't the value that you bring.
That's powerful. All right, so let's move into entrepreneurship. So you moved out here to Denver, and did you kind of link up with that gym owner and work for him and out of that gym immediately? What was kind of the immediate kind of like job and transition in regards to career when you moved out to Denver?
I immediately started working for him. Yeah, I was an independent contractor, which was a little different of a employment status than I was used to, working full-time prior.
Yeah.
And that was a learning curve, to be honest, because I was getting paid for the services I was providing, and that was what I was getting paid for.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, I loved it. The ability to learn was there and grow, but also I wanted a little bit more opportunity, I think is the word.
Yeah.
Again, this glass ceiling, and I remember exploring, like, what would 5 years from now look like with this company? And that conversation was, well, we're not quite there yet. You know, we're in this startup mode. We don't know.
Right.
We can't give you the tiers. We can't give you what it looks like. We can't give you a buy-in strategy because it doesn't exist. And it was at that time, too, that I was realizing, you know, I was in a gym environment.
Yeah.
And the gym environment is a beautiful thing, and it's also a terrible thing.
Right.
And I wasn't truly utilizing my degree in athletic training, which is bringing in rehab and bringing in injuries and branching. And I felt like there was that gap. Again, going back to the Olympic Training Center, looking at that gap, now I'm in performance. I'm on the side of, like, how do we get people moving optimally, feeling great?
Right.
And the question I was sitting there is, how can we branch that gap from injury to performance? Because it's there. And I think it's still I don't know if the word's solicited, but people haven't totally explored it yet. We have rehab clinics and we have gyms and performance centers.
Yep.
And so I was working for Lululemon on the side as an educator for them. Yeah. And they do an incredible personal development and vision and goals with all of their employees. It's incredible. Yeah. First time I've ever had a employer invest in the personal development of their employees, which is cool. And the same themes kept coming up with a lot of that work that I was doing at the time, which was entrepreneurship, adventure, ownership. I'm trying to think of the values, and connection and collaboration, and I knew that it was something that, although it was going to be difficult, I could do. I had the plan to start the business back in New York prior to moving out here, and then the plan had come up again a year in, where I almost moved back to New York. I was signing the dotted line on the lease to open up this wellness center. Yeah. And then I just knew that I wasn't going to do it if I didn't just do it. If I didn't just make the change and jump off the ledge and hope for the best. And it turns out I thought I jumped off the ledge, but then I just went, like, as close to full-time with Lululemon, because it's so much easier to, or at least for myself, to immerse myself in someone else's passions, to immerse myself in someone else's business venture, because I can throw myself wholeheartedly behind your business, and if it fails, it's yours. But if it's mine, like, hell, like, no way. So all of a sudden I'm like, I want to do my own thing, but I didn't. I was not ready. I was so insecure with who I was professionionally and personally that I was kind of hiding behind other people's businesses or other businesses to identify with. I identified as this employee. I identified as a Lululemon employee. And yet I wasn't happy. I wasn't completely fulfilled. Like, there was this void that I was feeling because I was refusing to answer what it was, which was to own my own thing and to have it be my baby and to throw myself wholeheartedly behind it. And that's, I guess I started the business a year and a half. Well, now I'm like, gosh, maybe a year and a half ago. Okay. But I did it part-time, so I worked full-time for another gym.
So you could not bring yourself to do it. Huh?
Like, what? What happens if details. And like, I don't have a backup plan.
Yeah.
I don't have mom and dad being like, yeah, it's fine. Like,
right, yeah.
What am I going to do?
I get it.
So I was like,
get it.
I want the full-time check from someone else's
of
company.
course, yeah.
And
security.
So,
security.
Security.
Yep.
And stability. Again, like I craved stability as a child, and I craved stability as a adult.
Right.
And I think that there was just this fear of being vulnerable, of being able to say, this is my company, this is what I'm doing, I hope I'm doing it right, you know? And so, I continually worked full-time for other companies and just kind of kept my company at bay, kept working with a couple clients, kind of kept connections, but really didn't say this is what I was going to do full-time.
Right.
And then I realized that it will never grow if I'm only giving it part-time attention.
That's powerful right there, yeah.
It's real. It's so real.
Yeah.
And there came the day where I realized in my full-time job of a company that I adore, love, admire, and want nothing more than to see them succeed, I realized I could only give them like 80% of myself. And even that was hard because I was trying to give my company 80% of, you know, I was just spreading myself way too thin. Yeah. And everyone was getting a watered down effect of Elise. The issue is when you show up as a really like badass killer individual and that is your 100%, people want that. Right. And they know when 80% is showing up because they can see such a vast difference. Right. And I had to take ownership the fact that neither my full-time job nor my company were getting 100% of me because I was trying to do both at the same time and trying to commit myself fully to both, and it just something had to change. And so May, I was very lucky. My general manager and I had an amazing conversation, and she recognized it and I recognized it, and I said, please just let me go part-time. And I did. And now I part-time coach, fitness coach for Alchemy 365, an incredible company that is going to forever change group fitness and what it looks like. And then I went full-time Thendara, and it gave, when I created space, abundance came. Like, holy shit. Like, all of a sudden, clients were here, connections were here. I was partnering with new physical therapists, new chiropractors, new massage therapists. And the business went from, like, stagnant, same old, to skyrocketed, best months I've ever seen. Incredible. And it all came from just making space for that opportunity to happen. Right.
Okay, so what is Thendara Wellness? Like, break that down for the listeners. And we don't have a lot of time because we're on a time crunch today. So just kind of like share with the listeners like what you do, what your business is, so they can reach out if they want.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So Thendara Wellness, it's a collective, it's a multidisciplinary approach to wellness. It is taking in spirit, physical, mental health, and what does that look like in wellness, and bridging the gap from injury to performance. So we are now officially bridging that gap that I've seen time and time again. People are getting injured, they're done, they're discharged from physical therapy, but they're not ready to go run that marathon. We can help you get there. Okay. So by bridging the gap, it's been incredible. And we offer one-on-one training, we offer group training, we offer wellness programming for apartments and employers, and I do online programming as well.
Now, when you've mentioned the word collective several times throughout our conversation, so within your business, Thendara Wellness, is there like a group of you? So like somebody might come to you and get that one-on-one personal training or coaching, but if maybe they need something else, do you kind of like outsource them to like a physical therapist or a chiropractor? Is there like a group of talented individuals working kind of together underneath Thendara Wellness?
goal. That's the goal.
Okay,
Right
that's the
now,
goal.
it
Okay,
is
cool.
it's a network of
Perfect,
referrals.
yes.
So we have
Love
preferred providers and concierge services.
There we go.
So
There we
when
go.
someone becomes a client of Thendara Wellness, we will provide any aspect of wellness that we can by giving them the best recommendation for who
Perfect.
can meet the needs of the client.
Okay, cool.
Eventually, that will all fall under the one umbrella.
Okay.
But learning now of what it means to grow too fast versus what does it mean to grow with intentionality
Absolutely.
and with an acute vision. 90 days, a year, 3 years, what does that look like, and how do we do it really, really well?
So now, is there like in regards to your specific business, is there out here in the Denver area, is there a physical location, brick and mortar, or is this all like online services at this point?
So I actually travel to the patient or the
There
client.
we go.
I go to them wherever they're at.
Cool, okay.
If they don't, so a lot of people have, if they live in an apartment building or they live in a condo, they might have access to a gym.
Absolutely, yeah.
A few basements that have gyms. So for some of my clients that have their homes, they have the equipment they need and I've helped outfit that. But
Cool.
I also rent space out of Wellset. It's at
Okay.
29th and Tennyson in the Highlands. Functional fitness space. It's also got a chiropractor, acupuncture, massage
Sweet.
underneath that umbrella. And I'm very, very lucky to have space there. So for
Cool.
people who don't have a gym, they can come there and work with me.
Awesome. Okay, so where do you I want to start with you personally. Where do you see yourself in regards to just kind of like your personal goals, your personal growth and development? Where do you see yourself in 2 years?
2 years.
2 years.
Really? You're not giving me the 5. You're not giving me 1.
No, five. Like I can't even think about 5 years. I can't even hardly think about 2 years. But two years is, I think, like that's a good number. Personally, like what do you want to continue to? How do you want to continue to grow as a human being?
I personally see myself in 2 years connecting and collaborating with others, continually learning, and attaining balance in my life.
Love it, yeah.
Those are the things I'm working towards.
So 2 years business-wise, where do you want to see Thendara Wellness and everything else you got going on? So 2 years business-wise, what's kind of like that big goal that you're aiming for?
You know, I have 2 tracks, so we'll see. But I'm open, and a brick and mortar has been on my vision board for a while.
Cool.
And is in the works. It's whether, does taking on that amount of overhead early in the game create a place of having to work for the money versus the money work for you kind of thing.
Yep.
But a brick and mortar has been on there, as well as creating a program that can be given to people West Coast, East Coast, not just in Colorado. So a scalable program that you will see on the East Coast in 2 years.
Love it. Okay, so before I ask the last question, now you're married, correct?
No.
No? Oh.
Hint, hint. No.
No, you have a significant other, though, right?
I have a significant other.
Okay, that's what I thought from your Instagram. I was like, okay. Okay, so what's his name?
His name's Peter.
Okay, so tell us what Peter means to you, like just that relationship. And I like to ask this question because usually like the people's significant other, like that, they play a huge role in their life. And like if people have kids, things like that, I always give my guests an opportunity to talk about that because like that's a big part of like who we are as individuals. So what is that relationship with Peter? What has that meant to you? What does he mean to you?
So I believe I mentioned way back when at the beginning, as a child, as a young adult, as a young woman, today I crave stability.
Right, yeah.
Peter is my stability. Peter is a stable force in my day in, day out. He shows up for me. I can continually count on him to be there. And also, he's nurturing. He provides the most empathetic, sympathetic. He is just a nurturing force where he's so kind and so selfless that I'm continually in awe. I'm waiting for the day he's like, I'm done. But he shows up for me day in, day out. He's awesome. A stable rock. I would say he doesn't like this. He didn't even know I was doing the podcast. He saw on Instagram. He's like, what the hell? You're going on the mic today? Like, I try because I haven't learned how to create the boundaries between personal and professional life. If I could, I would work on my business until 4 a.m. But I would probably not have a relationship at that point.
Probably not.
No. But so I work really hard to keep my personal and professional life separate. And Peter would love, I think, if I leaned on him a little bit more for the business. But I would say time and time again, he shows up and lets me lean on him when I'm ready, when I'm able to come to him, which I appreciate.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so the last question that I have for you, Elise, before we kind of wrap things up here is, what sets your soul on fire?
What sets my soul on fire?
What lights you up, girl?
Adventure. Yeah.
You're in the right state for that then, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, adventure. Adrenaline. I love pushing the boundaries of my comfort zone.
For sure.
And whether it's, ski touring, whether it's rock climbing, whether it's mountain biking, I absolutely love taking complacency and kicking it out the door.
There we go.
Because the minute we become complacent in our lives, we're already dead.
Yep.
We should be constantly fighting that, and adventure allows for me to do that. If I'm complacent, if I'm comfortable, well then, I'll be out on a ski mountain or riding my bike.
It's not going to happen, girl, is it? It's not going to happen. Yep.
There's no room for that.
Love it. All right, so if somebody's kind of resonated with your story, if somebody wants to reach out to you, find out more about your business and like everything underneath the collective, so to speak, where can people find you? Where can people find out about the services that you offer and your team offers?
Well, you can go to thendarawellness.com and check out our website, and it gives you the opportunity to reach out for a complimentary consultation in which we use Coach's Eye and Dartfish analysis to do a full functional movement screen, which is cool. And also just chat it up and see if what we can offer you meets your goals. Instagram, Thendara Wellness, Facebook.com/Thendara Wellness. Look it up. My own Instagram is @Elise Thendara. It's my middle name. It means edge of the forest. And again, I like to think of it branches the edge of injury, the edge of performance. We're right in that gap.
That's
so that's where Thendara came from. And I coach at Alchemy 365 in Lohi on Thursdays. You can look me up on the schedule. It's really fun. And otherwise you'll probably see me out on the ski mountain.
Cool.
Shredding.
All right. Well, Elise, I just want to thank you for just your transparency today, and I want to thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for sharing your passion with myself and the listeners. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. For
sure. You're very welcome. So 127 Fit podcast listeners, I just want to always thank you for your listening ears. If you would like to find out more about the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast or find out a little bit more about myself, you can find all of that on Instagram @127fit. Facebook is @QuintonVars. LinkedIn is @QuintonVars. And then if you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating review and also subscribe to the podcast, that would be greatly appreciated. If you or a friend or an acquaintance of yours think that you would be a great guest, or again, that friend or acquaintance, if you think they would be a great guest or guest for the podcast, or if you're interested in sponsoring the 127 Fit podcast, please just send me an email or give this email out. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. And another just favor I'd ask you guys, as you're finding great value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit podcast, if you would take that specific episode or episodes and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow, that would be cool. And then per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time until next time, I'll catch you guys later.